Good evening, everybody, and welcome to East Devon District Council's Cabinet meeting for the 10th of October 2023. I am your chair, Councillor Paul Arnott, and I'd like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via live streaming. Any members of the public who'd like to view the agenda, please go to our website, eastdevon.gov.uk. I will now start this meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present by our Democratic Services Officer, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Starting with yourself, Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Councillor Hayward.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Present.
Councillor Hall.
Present.
Councillor Hookway.
Present.
Councillor Jackson.
Present.
Councillor Young.
Present.
Councillor Ledger.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Loudon.
Present, Amanda.
And Councillor Ixon.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Cabinet. Good to see you all out in force tonight. Agenda item 1 is the minutes of our previous meeting. If anybody has a comment on that set of minutes from the 6th of September 2023, please could you raise your hand, first of all from outside of Cabinet, and then Cabinet. Okay, thank you very much, in which case I can take that as an indication that you all agree the minutes of the previous meeting, and I will now sign them. Was that the, and that this goes on there? Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Agenda item 2 is apologies, and we've got one apology from Councillor John Heath. Are there any other apologies we're aware of? No, thank you very much. Agenda item 3, which again we'll do through Amanda, is declarations of interest. I have to read this bit. When your name is called and mindful of the new code of conduct, which is now nearly 3 years old, please state your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to, state exactly what the interest is, and the specific type of interest you are declaring. And that's done by roll through Amanda, please.
Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Amanda. I'd like to declare an interest in agenda item 4, public speaking. I am an elected member of Colleton Parish Council, and so that is in effect non-registrable interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayward.
None, thank you.
Councillor Davey.
None, thank you.
Councillor Hall.
None, thank you.
Councillor Hookway.
None, thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
None, thank you.
Councillor Young.
None.
Councillor Ledger.
None, thank you.
Councillor Loudon.
None, thank you.
And Councillor Ixon.
None, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. We now go to our next agenda item 4, public speaking. And because of the interest I've just declared, I'm going to hand the chair over to my Deputy Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you. Agenda item 4 is public speaking. We have one member of the public who wishes to speak, Mr. Ian Priestley, Chair of Collie Ford PC. Mr. Priestley, may I invite you to come up to the podium, press the button, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Cabinet. I'm Ian Priestley, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the new Colliford Parish Council, of which I'm Chair. Colliford Parish Council is having to waste a huge amount of time discussing the judicial review at every meeting. It's an enormous distraction, and a cloud hangs over us. It's delaying us in providing for our village, for which we have a duty of care and responsibility, duties which we all take very seriously. I appreciate we've been advanced the second half of our precept, but that was due now anyway. We have now been paid next year's rent from the fields, despite Andrew Parr, who's Colleton's chairman, writing to the landowners and estate agents, warning them not to pay us. This money has been earmarked to pay the salary owed to our clerk for her initial work setting up our council. If EDDC hadn't have dropped our set-up money from £5,000 to £750, we would now have some more money to play with. Colleton still owes us £11,202 plus 6 months interest. They illegally refused to pay us, disobeying the Secretary of State. The courts have a big backlog, so there is no timescale for the and when the JR will happen. So I now ask you to give us that amount of money, and EDDC can then shoulder the responsibility of chasing Colleton themselves. Another advance of next year's precept will just see us chasing our tails for the foreseeable future. Failing that, I believe this cabinet would need to take a clear and simple plan of action to reinforce the RO, with a specific time frame for us all to work to, along the lines of the plan that we submitted to get us to our point of election. I understand your lawyers have written to Colleton Parish Council, but it seems with little effect. Even more alarmingly, the monitoring officer's power seems to extend to suggesting council training for anyone who's broken the code of conduct. That's it. In my opinion, immediate suspension and expulsion would be more fitting. Colleton know there are going to be serious consequences, but at the moment they're just running rings around you all. Cabinet, you have teeth. Can you please use them? EDDC should be pulling out all stops to assist a new council, not putting us into a position of potential failure by standing by and allowing another parish council to break the law, i.e. voting to resist the RO. Colleton councillors are doing their best, but this matter is very tiresome and wearing on us all. I don't want to lose councillors. They're good, hard, honest working people. Colford needs at least one district councillor to rely upon. Paul Arnott has correctly said that he would be compromised if he attended a Colford Parish Council meeting, so hasn't been able to come. Our other district councillor is Helen Parr, wife of the Colleton Parish Chair, Andrew Parr. She's tried her hardest to disrupt us at every stage. And let's not forget, it was in a meeting 3 months after the RO had been issued when she asked the new EDDC lawyer, Anita Williams, could the RO be stopped? Possibly with a judicial review, was her rather naive reply. 24 hours later, Andrew Parr had engaged a team of barristers to start the JR process between Colleton and EDDC, with Colliford stuck as piggy in the middle. And how much does that cost us all so far? I'm disappointed to be here tonight. None of us wanted to be in this stressful situation, and I can't understand what's driving it, or the motivation, or even the end game of it for Colleton. It's bizarre. To sum up, Colliford needs at least one impartial district councillor who will be happy to represent, guide and help us, please. And is anyone willing to take on that job? Colliford needs the £11,202 owed to us to be able to make future plans. And lastly, Colliford needs somebody at EDDC to get a grip and take some action. I can't stress that enough. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Priestley, for your representation. Councillor Jackson, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Priestley. If I may, I think it would probably be sensible if we could convene a meeting with yourself, your clerk and our monitoring officer, Melanie Wellman, if you're amenable to that, and we can have a look at all of the issues at play here. I am disappointed that the order hasn't been complied with, and also that we haven't heard back from the courts yet on that judicial review. So in the interim, I think it would be sensible if we sat down around a table.
Very frustrating. So, all that money being withheld from us, it's going to start crippling us.
Okay, if we could do that sooner rather than later, then I think that would be a sensible approach. Lovely, thank you.
Just to confirm that we'll get somebody in touch with yourselves tomorrow to organise that meeting.
Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mr. Priestley, for coming in and making all of those points. It is, as you know, as you all know, I am a Colleton Parish Councillor. I think everybody knows that I do not agree at all with the approach that's been taken here. And as it's in the public domain, I was at a Colleton Parish Council meeting last night and can confirm that the chair said that they would essentially just carry on until the judicial review, whether a decision was made whether it could go to judicial review or not. And I'm personally extremely concerned that because, as Mr. Priestley has said, the logjam in the court system, that this could go on for a week, a month, a year. We simply don't seem to understand that or be able to get any indication from that. I genuinely had considered whether I should resign from Collison Parish Council in order that I may come and serve Collie Ford meetings, but on balance, I'm sure there are a few people at Collison who would find that quite desirable, but I'm not going to do it, and I wish I could be playing a fuller part for you at the moment. But I'm very glad and grateful to Councillor Jackson and to our new Monitoring Officer Melanie Wellman to offer the meeting, and I hope that does help move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Loudon.
I have no particular axe to grind between Collie-Ton and Collie Ford, other than I've sat here now for over the last, is it 6 months, 9 months, I don't know, where we've had various reports, we've in fact made various decisions, and I think this may be the second time we've heard complaint about the difficulties facing the new council that was established, I think, in May, and I mean, I can understand, I'm sure anything I say won't go as far as the frustrations that have been expressed by Mr. Priestley, but I have to say, I think it is quite appalling set of circumstances for any of our local councils to find themselves in, especially when the problems they're facing appear to come from another local council and councillors who really ought to know better. This does bring shame on the people in the neighbouring area of both those parishes.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Are there any other public speakers? Anyone wish to comment? In which case, we'll draw public speaking session to a close, and I'll revert back to the chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you again, Mr. Priestley, for coming this evening. Agenda item 5 is late items or matters of urgency, and there are none. Agenda item 6 is for confidential or exempt items. There are 3 items to be dealt with in this way, which are agenda items 19, 20 and 21. Now to business. Agenda item 7, the minutes of the Strategic Planning Committee held on the 5th of September 2023. On your agenda this evening, there are a number of recommendations. I'm a little bit confused on these because some of them, just going forward to the next agenda item, which is looking at scrutiny minutes, seem to slightly overlap around 106 and SIL resources and processing. They're sort of slightly different. So I'm not entirely sure what to do there. I'm looking at minute 24, section 106 and SIL resources and processes. There are 3 recommendations that come out of strategic planning. And then when you come to scrutiny, there are then 4. Any advice, Democratic Services, what we should do about that, since they seem to duplicate? We need to adopt one set or the other.
It might be useful, Leader, if we actually heard from the Chair of Scrutiny to understand the difference, and then ultimately it's obviously a matter for the Cabinet as to whether you're happy to take those recommendations forward.
Okay. I'll look. What I'll do. Thank you for that. I think I'll come to the Chair of Strategic Planning first, Ollie, if that's possible, just to look at the on page 12 there, the recommendations from minute 24. And I think, did you have the benefit at that meeting of the report that came to scrutiny? Do you know, in order to get to that position?
I don't think so, but I assume that the report that went to strategic planning was very similar, if not identical, to the report that went to scrutiny, because Ed Freeman took both reports, I think, and so although they seem to come to a slightly different conclusion, the report, I suspect, was identical.
Okay, I think probably in terms of the best way of doing business here is let's do the first one first. Let's just do that. So if we're looking at those which are again on page 12, can I ask, do any members from outside of Cabinet have any comment on those? Any members inside Cabinet? If not, in which case, by a show of hands, can you say if you're prepared to agree minute 22 and minute 24 as recommendations for us? Thank you very much. We then go on to the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee, which, as I mentioned earlier, can be found on page 25. I'm playing flick backwards and forwards, trying to sort of do a comparison here over and over again. I don't know what to say here.
Chair.
Yes.
It's been suggested that perhaps we hear from the chair of the Scrutiny Committee, but I did raise this at the time at the Scrutiny Committee that this was an exact mirror of the other, and it just seemed, frankly, a waste of council time and member time, whichever committee this on, to discuss the same thing again. So, given that we've just approved minute 24 of the Strategic Planning Committee, and that the Scrutiny Committee items 1, 2 and 3 are, for all intents and purposes, identical, I'd propose that we strike those 3 recommendations from the Scrutiny Committee, and then just adopt number 4 if members of the Cabinet are so minded. But perhaps you might wish to invite the Scrutiny Chair to comment on whether he'd be happy to support that, because otherwise we've minuted it twice. And effectively, if we disagree this, do we then rescind the previous one? It just leaves us in a bit of an impasse.
Okay. I just wonder, I absolutely don't want to, force the Chair of Scrutiny to speak, but Councillor Goodman, thank you for coming this evening. I just wonder if you know how this happened and what the intention is of you as chair.
As you know, Leader, you were there at the meeting, and it was a very long discussion about 106 and SIL money, and the view of Scrutiny was that an interim solution needed to be made in advance of the paper that's coming to Cabinet and the full Council to employ people to improve the current system. They were really concerned that certain parish councils may well be missing out on this money, so therefore they were asking for an interim solution. I accept what Councillor Hayward said, quite happy with 1, 2 and 3. I think it's just the way they're worded. I think they're virtually the same. I've got no problem in agreeing there. But the 4th point was made quite clearly by a number of people at that meeting, which you were part of. And I think you yourself said that it was important to find out also what's gone on, and to find out what's gone on, we also need to move forward. I think the problem that we have got as a committee is that we do need to form a TAF group, and as you know, that's problematic because there's not the staff to set that up. So I think it is an issue. How we deal with it may be outside this meeting, but I think it is quite valid what Scrutiny said. It was a very important debate by many of the members. And now,
Yes, Councillor Barlow, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was there. And again, I think that's the important thing, that there wasn't a member around the table and people from outside. And I think most people, most parishes, most town councillors, if you've ever had experience of 106, you will know the frustration with East Devon District Council. And it was agreed that East Devon District Council doesn't want to look like it is holding back money, and wanted to help and assist the parishes and the town councils to be able to get their hands on the money, to be able to use it for the good of the people. And it felt like nothing was happening. So we did 2 things. First of all, we did the item 4, which was getting something done a little bit quicker, perhaps, than the next summer when they're going to report back to everyone, and hopefully have these people in place to be able to do it, but to see if we could find a solution earlier. It was also suggested we set up a TAF to do it as quickly as possible, so we could actually possibly even report to this meeting. However, as you've just heard, we've been told that apparently even if we set up a TAF, there wouldn't be anyone to talk to us because there are no staff and everyone's too busy. So basically it was saying that Scrutiny has no point, really.
I was so disappointed that you weren't going to come out on a note of despair, and there it was. Well done.
I do apologise,
so-
but
no, that's
it
okay.
does feel a little bit like it at times. Scrutiny is supposed to
Yeah.
assist you in getting things
Yeah, yeah,
done.
yeah.
They made a suggestion,
Yeah.
and then it was pushed back that we don't have the staff to do it anyway.
Well, that's not the suggestion we're looking at. There was no 5 regarding a TAF. We're looking at 4 at the moment. Can I just ask Melanie, our monitoring officer, to comment perhaps?
Thank you, Leader. I hope you don't mind me commenting in my capacity as interim manager of planning at the moment. But as members will be aware, we've got a significant resource issue within that team, and we are in the process of trying to recruit into the post. The difficulty is the time that is taking. We won't be in a position probably to have the staff we need until at least February. So absolutely, I mean, I can reassure members that this is high on our priority list, but obviously until such time as we get the staff in place, there is very little that we can do until we've got that. So I just wanted to make you aware of that, really, that that's the sort of timetable that we are working to.
Thank you, Melanie. Councillor Loudon, please.
I just wanted to pick up on the point that Councillor Barlow was making about lack of staff, and apologies to those of you who will be coming to Personnel Committee, apologies to you, those of you who've been to previous ones, and I'm going to say the same as I keep saying. This council is in exactly the same boat as every other employer in this country. We're scrabbling on a diminishing pool of people to try and recruit. Certain roles in local government are incredibly hard to find. We have sought to bring in our new reward arrangements, which hopefully are starting to help to place us slightly ahead of the competition. I'm afraid it is going to be, like, as I say, every other employer in this country, a challenge in probably years to come, especially as our resources are diminishing from central government. That said, we are also playing a degree of catch-up over, in my opinion, underinvestment in our staffing in recent years, and therefore we're hitting a perfect storm. We have a cadre of staff. They've got existing workloads, and we all want more as members, I'm sure, but there are times when we all get told, quite reasonably, although it may not feel that occasionally, that I'm sorry, we just don't have the capacity to do it. And I don't know the details about this particular TAF that Councillor Barlow and Councillor Goodman were talking about, but I would be very surprised if officers were turning down the request if it were not for lack of bums on seats, frankly.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Councillor Davey, please.
I don't know if Ed Freeman was at the scrutiny meeting. No.
He wasn't.
But I mean, it seems to me that what Ed is proposing is a costed solution to the issue that we have. We acknowledge that there is a problem there, and I feel that by the time a TAF was convened or interim solutions were put in place, Ed would be well on the way to recruiting to those posts anyway. The full council is on the 18th, and Ed is really just waiting for that permission to raise the fees, to approve the new fee structure, and then he can get on. I think he's got some HR things to do with the grading of the posts, but he'll then be in a position to get adverts out, and he wants to do that as quickly as possible. And I think in the meantime, he's looking at using other staff to ensure that nothing is falling down in the S106 department, and he acknowledges, and I think we all do, that there have been problems there, but I think the solution is on the way, and I'm not sure that interim solutions really are going to yield very much by the time those interim solutions are put in place.
I've just been looking at the minutes. So the minutes actually don't have a 4. So the minutes have 3 recommendations to Cabinet.
Strategic planning.
Oh, right, sorry, that's
Need to
my
go that
apologies. I've gone the wrong way. I'm going back to 25 again. Right, so that's strategic planning, and these are the recommendations of scrutiny. Okay. So I think 4, the spirit of 4 is what everybody would like to do, clearly, which is find an interim solution. But what we've just heard is the resources aren't there at the moment, and we've had a caution from Councillor Davey that after what has to be said a very long time, planning and Ed are actually acting on this right now, which should then unlock the essence of 4. It's difficult, isn't it? Because I just kind of think if we pass 4 and we know we can't actually deliver it, is that a wise thing to do? I'll come to Councillor Loudon and then Councillor Barlow. Councillor Loudon, sorry. Yeah.
Miles away. If we were to agree to 4, then what it is basically saying is best endeavours. And if best endeavours are overtaken by events on the 18th, then they're overtaken by events on the 18th. I think as long as we have said publicly, as we're doing tonight, that there may be challenges in finding the solutions quickly that scrutiny were hoping for, then we have alerted people and we're acting then in good faith.
And to be fair to scrutiny, there's the caveat as soon as possible in there as well. So yes, thank you, Councillor Goodman. Councillor Young, please.
You've just said what I was going to say, as soon as possible.
Yeah, I can read your mind, Jeff. You're going to say something about that and something about Manchester City tonight. Councillor Hookway, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I'm going to play devil's advocate here. It would be excellent if the interim solution actually found extra staff that we could take on to get this solved. However, in view of what Councillor Loudon has stated about the national situation, what if we don't get enough staff? What then? How are we going to solve this problem, which is a problem that is serious in my view, and we need to find a resolution. Now, an interim solution is a nice phrase, but it's not very specific, is it really? So we need to think, I believe, something that is far more robust.
Councillor Hayward and then Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I entirely agree with Councillor Hookway. If you're going to have a plan, it needs to have some foundation behind it, but perhaps that is a matter for the Personnel Committee to come up with a strategy with the HR department, rather than the committee chairs having aspirations for dealing with personnel issues and recruitment and on a national recruitment issue. So, I appreciate you playing devil's advocate. I think leaving that in doesn't undo the problem we have, and actually it leaves us with the scope to bring in interim solutions. I personally would be quite happy to leave number 4 in, strike out 1 to 3 because they're superfluous, keep number 4 in, but ask the Personnel Committee, perhaps when they next meet, to deal with this as a matter of priority of planning recruitment above and above everything else. But that's for the chair of the Personnel Committee to deal with officers. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Barlow first, then Councillor Davey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members were very concerned that we have already handed back money to developers from the 106 pots because we are not chasing them. And this isn't so much as a matter of expert planning officers. This is more debt collection on the ones that are the 150 ones that are outstanding, that have been issued, that haven't been paid. So you can quite easily hire in outside people to do debt collection. I'm not saying it's the perfect way of doing it, and obviously this is why they wanted to set a tap up to look into the possibilities of doing this. All I'm saying is that we are handing money back to developers. We're always saying that developers get away with this, that and the other, and here we are handing it back because we haven't been doing our job up till now. And I'm not being negative, I'm trying to be positive to find a solution, but seem to be being thwarted.
Well, I think, yeah, no, absolutely simpatico with what you're saying, Councillor Barley. I don't know if the problem with this is that it came from the meeting, but I don't think there was a experienced officer in planning present, and therefore what has happened is an understandable recommendation has come forward, but we haven't had the officer research done, or there was no presence there that could say whether it could be done or not. I'm just trying to think of a constitutional way, Melanie, where we can not just ignore this, but sort of park it in some way for a bit without offending scrutiny. Because when you make a commitment like this, you do need to be able to resource it. And what's being said at the moment is we don't know where the resources are coming from.
I mean, I suppose there's two things, Leader. I mean, you could decide not to go ahead with the recommendation, but very much on the basis that there's a commitment by the planning team to obviously come forward with proposals. And as you've already said and everyone has said, we are already in the process of doing that. So it's very much on our priority list. You could approve this recommendation because it does say as soon as possible, as a number of people have highlighted. So actually, if you did approve it, it's not going to cause us a major issue. So, you know, you could go with it if you were so minded, or you could amend the wording if you wanted to as well.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Davey, then Councillor Young.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Councillor Hookway that an interim solution is a bit vague. It doesn't actually say what the interim solution is. I think we've heard it suggested that it's bringing agency staff or outside staff, and I don't have a problem with that. If Mr. Freeman feels that is the way he needs to go, and that there are suitably qualified agency staff who can deal with this, but we need to consider there's going to be a budget for that. So that's going to have to come back for us to approve the budget, and then possibly that'll have to go to another full council. So I'm struggling to see how there's a kind of quick fix for this. And I think, I agree there have been historic problems, and I hope that we are now coming up with a solution that will ensure that this doesn't happen again. But I don't see any kind of quick fix, but it maybe Mr. Freeman could be asked to go back to scrutiny committee to report on what is happening in the meantime. So maybe we could amend that Mr. Freeman just goes back to the next scrutiny meeting maybe, and explains where he is with the recruitment process and what in the meantime is being done to ensure, as Councillor Barlow has rightly stated, that we're not having to hand back money because we just haven't claimed it in good time.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Goodman, can I ask you if would that be agreeable, do you think, to your committee if Mr. Freeman came to your next meeting of scrutiny and discussed this? I'm mindful of, I'm not really sure what the data is behind this. I haven't actually seen the raw data about these 150 outstanding cases. There could be 15, there could be 1,500, I don't really know. But if we didn't go ahead with 4 tonight, would that be okay with you on the basis that Mr. Freeman then came and we could have another talk about it next time at scrutiny?
Well, all I would say is I think Councillor Hayward summed it up well just now. I see no reason leaving that in, and I think you also said it, Leader, that it's best endeavours. And all we wanted to do was to ensure this was dealt with, and it may be we could say something like, as soon as practically possible, to make this a priority for the service to deal with, because I don't think we want to let this go, because it does worry a lot of parish councillors right across East Devon, and by taking it out we may well find that they think, well, actually, are we really serious? And I think we are serious. We've heard it tonight, some very positive comments that we want to resolve it, and I know it's got a real challenge to do it, but I think by taking it out completely, it would then say, well, how important is this? But if Melanie can think of rewording that says we make it a priority to resolve as soon as practically possible, I don't see a problem with that. I think the interim was probably a play of words, but we just wanted we wanted Ed to really focus on this, and we do want Ed, and he's agreed to come back to in the spring to scrutiny. But that's how I leave it there, sir.
No, thank you very much for that. So, Councillor Young, and then Councillor Hall.
I was going to propose all 4 recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
As read, we are saying as soon as possible, in an interim solution. We're not all going to be sacked because we don't live up to someone's expectation of as soon as possible.
Okay, Councillor Hall, please.
Thank you, Leader. I think it's just to make a couple of comments after some things which have been said tonight. I mean, the value, obviously, of Section 106 and SIL money is extremely important to local authorities, town and parish councils, and those timely collections of monies, those proper systems of making sure that those town and parish councils can bid in certain cases for certain elements is important to have. I can't personally speak for the 150 cases which are mentioned here, but there's a lot more training, there is a lot more nous, there's a lot more brinkmanship, there is a lot more technique, there is a lot more of all sorts of things in a Section 106 and SIL officer's job. It's more than just simply debt collecting. I think also it's important that to say I don't think that necessarily there is the agency staff out there that can miraculously cure this. The average local authority worker will have to give at least 3 months' notice. So therefore it's not a quick solution. I think in the long term, whether we're talking about 106 staff, planning staff, licensing staff, I think we need to get out there as an organisation, whether it's Plymouth University, whether it's the University of West of England, and actually encourage staff to come from those students. I sat in a group of 80 to 100 when I did my master's degree. I was the only one that vocally wanted to work for a local authority. The only one. We have to change that if we're going to help cure the issues of staffing issues for local authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's very, very interesting extra insight there. Thank you. Councillor Loudon, please.
2 things. I disagree with what Councillor Young's just proposed, because we've already, I think, noted that 1 to 3 in scrutiny's recommendations, and I think Chair of Scrutiny also accepted that had already been in effect agreed by us in the previous item. So turning to the sole recommendation that I think we ought to be looking at, and we have been debating for some considerable while now, I would suggest that we add to the end of 4 words to the effect of, I'll read it, and then if officers need me to say it at dictation speed, I'm happy to do so. So we add an extra sentence at the very end saying, officers are asked to give this matter their earliest attention.
Okay, so we had, I ought to see first if there's a seconder for Councillor Young, or indeed if Councillor Young wishes to withdraw, because that's clearly the amendment coming from Councillor Loudon. So would anybody like to second Councillor Young's initial proposal to go for all 4 on block? No, in which case I think they take that as an amendment from Councillor Loudon. Would anybody like to second that amendment? Okay, in which case can we...
Officers want me to say it again?
No, did that.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we then vote on the amendment, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Excellent. Phew. Well, thank you. I'm really pleased to see, seriously, Councillor Goodman and Councillor Barlow here tonight. Thank you for playing a full part in that. I have to say, Ian, it doesn't normally take this long to get the minutes recommendations through. Right, so where on earth were we? We now go to the minutes of the placemaking in Exmouth Town and Seafront Group, held on the 12th of September 2023. For the Mayor. Would any members wish to make particular recommendations on this item, or can we agree to move forward without specific recommendations? No? All good, thank you very much. Agenda item 10, the minutes of the Budget Setting and Capital Allocations panel of the 18th of September. The same question applies. No, thank you very much. Agenda item 11, the minutes of the LED Monitoring Forum for the 19th of September. Any comments, recommendations? No, thank you very much. Agenda item 12, the minutes of the Extraordinary Recycling and Waste Partnership Board held on the 20th of September 2023. Having received these minutes, any debate on content should be taken up when discussed at the Part B report, agenda item 19, Recycling and Waste Contracts Extension. So there seem to be, everybody's happy with those, so let's go with those as they are for now and then take up the debate further at agenda item 19. Agenda item 13, right, at last, some proper business. Libby, sorry to keep you waiting. This is very important. Agenda item 13 for care leavers and the idea of a council tax discount policy. Over to our Assistant Director for Revenues, Benefits and Corporate Customer Services, Libby Jarrett, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this report is seeking members' approval to implement a council tax discount scheme for Devon care leavers until their 25th birthday. It is recognised that care leavers are some of our most vulnerable residents who face the challenge of having to live on their own at a young age, maintain a home and manage their lives independently without the support from their families. Across the Devon districts, there is an in-principle agreement to introduce a council tax discount for care leavers. This was discussed as part of the Devon District Forum meetings and is supported by our leader and chief officers. The draft policy is included at the end of the report. This still needs finalising in order to ensure that our scheme aligns with the rest of Devon and to reflect changes in potential funding arrangements. Currently, the scheme costs will be fully met by the billing authority, although this may change moving forward, so that costs would be shared in proportion to the amount preceptors receive. As highlighted in the report, the numbers that will benefit are relatively low. Current data suggests that there would be approximately 15 at a cost for the current year of circa 7,000 to 8,000. That's because we'd be implementing it from the 1st of October, so it equates to 6 months costs. As this is a new policy, an equalities impact assessment has been carried out, which is available under the background links. Even though the equalities relevance is high, the impact has been assessed as low. There are 2 recommendations in this report. The first is for Cabinet to recommend to full council to agree a care leavers discount scheme for up to 100% relief until their 25th birthday, where Devon County has acted as their corporate parent. The scheme is to apply from the 1st of October and it is using our provision under section 13A1C of the Local Government Finance Act 1992. And the second recommendation is that Cabinet approves delegated authority to myself as the Assistant Director, covers revenues so that the scheme criteria can be finalised in order to allow for subsequent technical changes and to ensure it aligns with other Devon District councils, as well as allow for any changes in the funding arrangements. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Libby. Just going to 1.7 on page 48 of the report. Yes, I attended the Devon District Forum meeting. In fact, it's been mentioned at a couple of meetings this year. And it's a really good example of non-partisan cooperation between county and the districts, where a good idea has come forward and everybody's got pretty good buy-in. I can't quite remember where we are in the chain of who's already fully agreed it. I think we're probably middle to the end at the moment, but everybody else is going for it. Just for information, Councillor Rigson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is an absolute no-brainer, quite honestly. Fortunately, there are very few children affected, but their lives as a whole, when trying to cope from childhood to adulthood overnight kind of thing by having to support themselves, is a huge undertaking, I think, and so I fully support this, and I think we should vote it through.
Is that a proposal, Councillor Rigson?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson by Nats wants it.
Second that.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Well, I was just going to say the same, but yeah, I think this is it's a simple thing that we can do. I was going to ask Libby what other support is in place for care leavers, but I assume that would be up to Devon County Council, wouldn't it, to have other support in place. So this is the bit we can do, and I think it's a small thing, but it'll make a difference.
Thank you. You're not desperate to expand upon the history of Devon County Council care leaving, I imagine, Libby, to know. Very, very good. Correct. Okay. Thank you very much. Can we go to a vote on that then? Was there somebody else? Who have I missed? So if we can go to a vote on that, all those in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you, Libby. Draw a very brief breath because agenda item 14 is on the updates to our discretionary rate relief policies. I shan't rehearse again Libby's complete title, but just tee Libby up, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this relates to two of our discretionary rate relief policies within business rates, the local discretionary rate relief and a hardship policy, and the discretionary rate relief for partly occupied premises, quite a technical relief. These are, as highlighted, they are existing policies, but they have needed to be updated to reflect changes in relation, in particular, around subsidy control limits that replace state aid. There's also some changes being proposed to the delegations in relation to the decision-making process, and that will align the local discretionary rate relief with the partly occupied scheme. And there's also some minor administrative changes, new policy template and the reordering of criteria. The aims of the policies remain exactly the same. The recommendation is to approve the updated policies and to allow in future for technical and administrative changes to be made by the Assistant Director responsible for business rates, myself, without the need to bring this back to Cabinet. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Libby, again. Any speakers from outside of Cabinet? If not, anybody from within Cabinet, including those who may have an idea about proposing this? Councillor Hayward, please.
I'm happy to propose, Chair.
Anybody else? Councillor Rickson, thank you very much. Can we take that to a vote, please, then? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Libby, for that. Just looking ahead in the agenda. Yes, you are now excused. Thank you for that. Okay. Now we go to agenda item 15, our financial plan for 2024 to 2034. Yeah, and a report from our Director of Finance, S151, Simon Davey, please. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you, Leader. So attached to this report you have the detailed financial plan over 10 years. I've tried to summarise the key points in the summary page for you, so you can focus on that, but by all means go into the detail. It's, I think, a very good update of where we are financially and the current state in terms of local government finance. So there's a lot of detail in there. It also has links off to other documents as well. But in terms of the summary page, the financial plan is split into two elements. One is the medium-term financial plan model, so members will be aware of that, where we look 10 years ahead, look at the expenditure that we believe will hit us over the next 10 years, taking our current service delivery as it is today, looking at any contracts, the changes relating to that, looking at inflation, etc. And then matching against that, we look at income that's available to us over that same period. But as I say, if you look at the detailed financial plan, you'll see the assumptions I've made, changes in pay, changes in the refuse contract, etc., and how that affects our numbers going forward. So on page 70 of the agenda is a table which summarises that position, that looks at your expenditure and then income available. And if we just focus on the first 3 years of that. So that's next year's budget, 24-25. So at the moment, at this point in time, we're looking at a shortfall. So expenditure greater than income available to us of 578,000. Year after, 25-26, 563,000. Then you'll see a significant jump in terms of the deficit number of nearly 4.5 million for 26-27. Most members, I think, will be fully aware of the reason for that. I've bored members time and time again in terms of the business reset. So we're told at some point in time, local government finance regime will change. The extra money, which is now, if you look at the medium-term financial plan, in the order of nearly 5 million extra money coming from business rates, is now significantly paying for a number of our services. In 26-27, currently thinking that's when that business reset will come in, and that's when it has that significant effect on our finances. That is worst case scenario. That's based on no transitional scheme coming in, so I'm painting quite a bleak picture for that year, but that's where it sits at the moment. So the second part of our financial plan looks at how we're going to deal with those deficits. So that's our catchy title of the financial sustainability model. But basically what that's saying is for the next 2 years, 24, 25, 25, 26, at an order of, if the numbers come out as we're predicting, at the order of a deficit of 600,000, we can do that working with portfolio holders, working with the senior management team in terms of how we can find that level of savings for those 2 years. We've got that model, which, again, if you dive into the financial plan, explains what we're doing, but it's basically looking for efficiencies, cost savings, looking at income generation. So it's not it's still difficult because it's still a level of savings to find. It's not saying we can go out and spend lots more money. It's actually saying we need to reduce our expenditure or increase income, but it's a level that we can deal with as a council. Beyond that, for 26-27, if it comes in at that sort of level, the 4.5 million, then we're looking at a different scenario altogether. We're looking at remodelling our service delivery. So I'm suggesting we carry on with the financial sustainability model, working through that in terms of how we can drive those efficiencies, savings, increase income for the next 2 years to balance the books. But in the same, over that sort of years period, also look with Cabinet over modelling what does that 4.5 deficit look like, how might we approach that. To give reassurance, and the report talks about it, we do have a 3 million reserve set aside to deal with that risk if that deficit suddenly comes in, how we can pay for services for a longer period to help us reshape. But that's, in summary, what your financial plan's doing. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Simon. Really clear and very brief as well, so admirable. The only thing I'd like to say about this is that genuinely, as the council's moving forward, and I hope everybody can feel this happening now, as leader, I would really appreciate cross-council understanding, collaboration, cooperation in all of this, that we should all 60 members should help looking ahead to what is obviously a tricky potential moment in 2026, 2027, because by the time next year happens, and certainly the year after that, we'll be having some very serious discussions about what's going to happen. We don't know what government might be likely to do either, and I think that's another good idea for keeping all 60 of us across this, just try and take it out of national politics. I'm sure there'll be help from people like the LGA lobbying on this as well, but I'm grateful for Simon for calling it as it is tonight, because we do need to know that. Anybody from outside of Cabinet? Councillor Goodman, please.
Thank you, Leader, and I agree with you, your final comment there, and I think it's really important we all work together to see us through the next few years. As Simon has said, this is a worst case scenario. Let's hope that doesn't happen, but what's important is the decision we make will affect residents, and that's really important. I've really just got 2 questions for Simon. One, with the peer review and what that could bring, could this help us in terms of staffing and in terms of processes to look at the budget? And the second item is on page 73, point 4 on the budget setting, where it's got recycling and refuge and a figure of 600,000. considering what we will be discussing later on, that figure is different than what we're discussing later on. Does that figure include more than just the contract negotiations? Thank you.
Maybe on that latter point, we should discuss that further in part B. I think,
Yes,
because
that's,
otherwise
yeah.
we're trading academic amounts, aren't we? But sorry, Simon, for the first question.
Okay, so in terms of the peer review, I fear it might have the opposite effect, possibly. So in terms of what recommendations might come out, we already know internally that some of the areas that are highlighted in the financial plan, some of the work in terms of the financial sustainability model over data capture, corporate performance monitoring, some of those areas that we really want to work on, I think could be a theme within the peer review. So I think there may be possibly some recommendations about extra resources, possibly in sort of corporate capacity, maybe. So I think that will have the opposite effect. But there may be some good pointers for us in terms of some recommendations as well. In terms of, I think the leader's right, in terms of we can chat about the second bit when we come to part B, but for the medium-term financial plan, I've taken worst case scenario in terms of what I think the cost might be. Also, there are other things in there like inflation that I've built in for future years. So, yeah.
Oh, you're doing it at 10% annual inflation, or what have you been doing it on?
In the main, what I've done is up the current year's numbers to reflect current inflation, running at, it was about 7% at the point in time for a lot of our contracts. I've then added in a buffer for contingency of about 150 across the board for inflation, because for 24-25 I've gone with Treasury predictions of dropping back down to 2%. Whether I'm right or wrong on that, but I've got some, we've got some contingencies in there if that's wrong.
Okay, that's good. Oh, I'm going to remortgage that. That's where it's going. Okay, anybody else like to go? Councillor Loudon, please.
2%, eh? Well, some people do say the next 5 years are going to still continue to be challenging for inflation, but there we go. It is all a bit of a guessing game, isn't it, at the moment? The serious point. So, if we go to page 70 in the medium-term financial plan, and Simon, you have correctly alerted us year in, year out over the last few years to the potential rebating of the business rates that has been anticipated. We are now possibly 15 months away from a general election, and given that if there was to be a change, it would first hit us in April 2025, from what you're saying here at page 70. I'm looking at, if I look at the bottom of page 70, you've got year 25-26 with the arrow saying £500,000 impact because of business rate.
Yeah, perhaps that's the way I've drawn it. So
So
the
it's
business rate impact will hit us the first, if it comes in 26-27, it'll be the 1st of April 26.
right. Okay, that answers that then. But I suppose the thought in my mind is, if we're 15 months away from a general election, and who knows what that will bring, maybe a bit of glitter, I don't know. You haven't been watching the news today.
No.
So the serious point is, at what point would any government need to give us notice of a change to bring about the effect that you're identifying?
So the 24-25 years pretty certain, in that we've been given we're in the first year of a 2-year settlement in theory. So 24-25 should be sound. If the trade, if you like, or the talk is, as you say, of an election, so to bring anything in for 25-26 26 is very unlikely if you're in an election year. So assuming either a new government or a same flavour government coming in, then that's why 26, 27 is the first year we see that, I think, the first chance of anything coming in that's significantly changing the numbers, change of policy, change of direction on local government funding. What we've been used to is settlement being flagged November, December time. So if it follows that suit, it'll be basically December 25. We should get a flavour for what will happen in 26, 27. But if there is significant change coming, consultation should come out before that. So that's, we've had lots of signals previously, and the government have tried to help local authorities by doing settlements, giving a number of years to give some certainty, but in recent years that's just fallen away, and we don't find our numbers out until the beginning of December, and I feel that will probably continue for at least a couple of years.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Rickson, please.
Well, with so much money having been stripped out of local government over recent years, and with the increasing number now of councils which are declaring Section 114, could there potentially be any reality check from current or future governments that more funding must be put back into local government in order to keep services going, because the public will not forgive them if they don't, I think.
Very good statement and question in one, but yes, absolutely. Yep. Anybody? Yes, Councillor Ledger, please.
Thanks, Simon. Exhilarating as usual. That was genuine. Could I just propose it, please, Chair?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ledger. Anybody else like to fall for this obvious financial scam going on? Anybody else like to second it? Councillor Hookway, thank you very much. In which case, I was joking there, obviously, by the way. Sorry, that was inappropriate. In which case, can we go to the vote on that? All those in favour, please. Thank you very much. No, thank you, Simon, for that. And it's interesting times, isn't it? But there are other councils most other councils are in a much worse potential condition than us. So thank you, as ever, for keeping the ship going down the canal, or whatever the metaphor there is, or the coach on the road, or Very good. So we now go to agenda item 17. Yet again, 16. Yes, of course we do, because it's Rob and the local economic review. Now, this is a truly magnificent document, which I have read all the way through, and Rob already knows his task tonight is to entertain us, but also not for more than 10 minutes. Over to you, please, Rob.
Thank you, Chair, and for the time restriction. So, as detailed in the report, the Economic Development team have taken the opportunity during a period of relatively reduced economic turbulence to complete a local economic review, or LER, capturing what I think are the core headline and more detailed economic data for the district. This substantial work was undertaken by EDO Tom Winters with the support of the team, and is presented in full in Appendix A. So most data gathered there is from the 2021 census, that's the primary data sets, and the Office of National Statistics. The ONS data is typically sample-based and quite helpfully provides annual figures for a longitudinal picture. Some of the information reinforces local economic and employment challenges which we already knew East Devon was facing, but the data, I'm pleased to say, also includes a couple of positive surprises that we didn't necessarily anticipate. The purpose of this report then is to present the main findings of that local economic review and to highlight these core issues and challenges facing the district economy as evidenced. Main findings cover three specific areas, the first being demographic challenges. Some of the more notable findings within that section include our working age population at 54.5% of our total population is low, and it's consistently below our neighbouring authorities' national and regional averages. When compared against all 332 local authority areas in England, East Devon has the 4th highest proportion of retirees and the 3rd lowest proportion of working age people. This has got inevitable consequences in terms of reduced employment and constrained local business growth, reduced economic activity, and sadly lower business rates income to fund core council services. Just as notable as our increased proportion of retirees and reduced working age population is the pronounced variance in our population statistics across our wards. This surprised us, it certainly surprised me. The graph at 2.3 of the report in front of you shows just how different the age profile is for Cranbrook, where around 3% of residents are retired, compared to Sidmouth Town, for example, at the other end of the spectrum, where the majority of residents, 51%, are retired. District-wide, only 2 of our 30 wards have a retiree population below the national average. The 2021 census also shows that Devon has the lowest proportion of economically active residents and highest number of economically inactive residents compared to the other EHOD or Greater Exeter geographies and the regional and national averages. On employment and wages, I'm pleased to report that the Local Economic Review did provide a more optimistic set of data. Department for Work and Pensions claimant count stats for June this year show our total claimant count standing at 1,410 individuals, or around 1.7% of our working population. So we might be weak in terms of our shrinking proportion of working age residents, but in terms of unemployment levels, we're the 18th lowest of 332 local authority areas, and only one ward in Exmouth Town has a rate of unemployment marginally higher than the national average. On wage levels too, despite the critical loss of Flybe and around 1,000 of our most valuable highly skilled jobs in March 2020, the LER highlights positive change over the last 10 years. Enterprise zone effect, don't know, definitely plays a role. Thirdly, the LER highlights the importance of ensuring the supply of local employment in ensuring our communities are sustainable. The data shows East Devon does compare poorly regionally and nationally in terms of providing local employment to reduce the need for out-commuting. This has got clear consequences for our carbon emissions and the sustainability of our communities. Our carbon emissions per capita has decreased since 2011 from 8.4 to 6.2 tonnes per East Devon resident, but this does remain higher than our neighbouring local authorities' national and regional averages, with transport, including commuting, accounting for 31% of our overall emissions. Now, we know from our own experience and the local plan evidence base that as a district there is very high demand from employers to provide local employment within East Devon. This is currently just over 50 hectares of demand that's currently not being met district-wide. However, the actual supply of available employment land and premises to meet this demand is hugely constrained. Currently just 1.7 hectares of available land across East Devon to meet that 50 hectares of supply. Sorry, 50 hectares of demand and 1.7 hectares of available supply. So this means that in some cases local employers must look outside of the district and relocate, with increased out-commuting a consequence of this. Further work is being undertaken by officers to understand the challenges of existing allocated but undelivered employment allocations and to understand future supply on a sub-regional basis. That's a very quick, hopefully less than 10-minute summary of our key findings. In order to ensure members and officers are informed and able to act upon this most up-to-date local economic evidence, our recommendations are that Cabinet endorse the report and the local economic review underpinning it, approve the use of this evidence to inform the development of the emerging council plan, and endorse the development of a new economic development strategy for East Devon that will directly engage the core challenges highlighted within the work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Rob. Can I just ask, do you think it's practical or even affordable? Because this is such a invaluable report, and it's right now, the East Devon Local Economic Review. I wonder if we could get that printed off and delivered to all members, perhaps, because it's very easy if we just look at this stuff on the iPads, here today, gone tomorrow, and that is our local economic Bible in a way, isn't it, that we should refer to. So just a thought, if Simon can...
Oh, don't worry about the finance. You print out this one.
I'd like that, please. Okay, right, would anybody like to... yes, Councillor Goodman, please.
Yes, can I first of all say what a fantastic report. Doesn't it give the council and officers an awful lot of information to start looking at what we need to do? And I'm not going to go through each of them because there's so much wealth of quality of data. But one thing that did strike me was on page 120, where actually the births are outdoing deaths by the biggest margin it's done for a number of years, certainly since records here start in 2016. So that in itself is good news, but it also then posed some challenges for this council in terms of housing and jobs, etc. But what a fantastic piece of data this council's got now to help shape things in the future. And I think the team should be congratulated.
Absolutely, thank you, Councillor Goodman. Anybody else from outside of Cabinet? Cabinet members, please. Councillor Davey, then I'll go to Councillor Hall first because it's his portfolio, and then Councillor Davey. Oh, but pausing only to allow Councillor Olive to come in first.
Thank you, Leader. I do exist, honest. I just wanted to make the suggestion that perhaps this might be useful information for our neighbourhood planning officer to distribute to groups that are currently working on new neighbourhood plans that are in development, specifically in terms of broader dissemination.
Okay, that's great. If we could minute that as an idea, please, Amanda, that would be very helpful. Thank you. So, Councillor Hall next. Oh no, sorry, Councillor Blakey. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Just a point about printing this report, which is excellent and contains a huge amount of data. If anybody really does want it in printed form, and I suspect it's going to be 50, 60 pages of it and probably an inch plus thick, it might be a good idea to ask first, because it's the kind of tome that for those who aren't going to use it, it's just going to gather dust and it's going to cost an awful lot of trees. So please, let's not just produce 60 copies with the cost both to the council in cash terms, but also with the environmental hat on, which we're always supposed to have. Please, let's be careful.
I was assuming it would be printed on rice paper, but no, that's a very good point, Councillor Blakey. Absolutely right. It should only be those who actually, sort of nerds like me, really want a copy to read at night. So now coming to Councillor Hall, please.
Are you sure? Firstly, I wanted to thank Rob and his team for this work. And I probably would say this as the portfolio holder, but I feel this is the most important, far-reaching document that this Cabinet will ever look at. And I think it's really important that every member of this council sees this. And I mean staff as well as elected members. I've asked Rob if this is possible for this to be reviewed each year to keep members up to date with what is going on. This is hugely important, the statistics within this. It has far-reaching consequences for planning, it has far-reaching consequences for our own local plan and for our emerging local plan. It is so important that we look into this and we act on the evidence and the information which is here. And I'm sure others will want to speak, but Leader, I'm quite happy to propose all the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hall. Anybody else? Sorry, I missed who was next. Councillor Davey, please.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is incredibly useful data. I'm going to speak up for the economically inactive because I'm one of them, and I'm sat here now, aren't I? But I just wanted to make the point that I agree. There are a lot of people who are economically inactive, but we do need to remember the contribution that retired people make to our community in terms of the amount of voluntary activity that they undertake, those perhaps with small part-time jobs, and the huge contribution made by parents who are looking after childcare on behalf of their children as well. So many of these things are actually supporting economic activity, but because they don't feature on balance sheets, they're not counted as economically active. So I totally understand where this is coming from, but I just think we need to acknowledge that those who are in that bracket may not be as completely useless as the data kind of implies, you know. I was particularly interested in the travel to work data as well, because that's a particular interest of mine. Yeah, I was quite interested that even some of those places that I would have thought had really good transport links, such as Exmouth, have surprisingly high amounts of car commuting, and I'd love to see further data on that to try and find out where people are going, how they're using their cars, whether there's a need. I mean, I came here by car tonight because the public transport is absolutely hopeless to get from Exmouth to Honiton. But if I'm going from Exmouth to Exeter, I will definitely be considering public transport, and I just wonder if it would be possible to find more data on why so many people actually drive up the A376 to go and park their car in Exeter, because it seems to me that that's the worst possible way to get there. I'm also interested in the shortfall we've got on employment sites, and obviously that has implications for strategic planning, and I'd love to bring more sites forward, but I'm interested that it refers to constraints, but I don't really know what those constraints are, and I wonder if Rob could expand a little bit on why we have such a shortfall in the amount of employment land that we need and what is available. And I note 2.31, I think it is, that officers are going to do further work to find out why some of those sites that have been allocated haven't even come forward. But I'd be interested to know why we have such an enormous shortfall in employment sites. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. I'll come back to Rob in a moment, just capture a few more comments or questions, if there are any, from any. Councillor Hall, please.
Can I just come back on one thing? And this report is highlighting what happens within the community. It is not meant to highlight that there is, for example, anything wrong with areas within the demographics, because everybody has an important role to play. But what this highlights is, for a sustainable community, there has to be the right balance, and it's using these figures to make sure that that mix of providing employment with providing housing is done in the right way, so that the balance is maintained for the benefit of the sustainability of the East Devon economy and community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Hookway, and then I'll go back to Rob.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to draw members' attention to paragraph 2.21, method of travel to workplace, because what's caught my eye is the numbers, or the percentage, who are working mainly at or from home, which is now 30%. And that's a change that's happened in 3 years since the pandemic. And I think that will have really profound implications for planning, placemaking, and environment. Speaking to my son and his friends the weekend, working from home for 30-year-olds is now almost the norm. And that is a change I think we have got to consider, even for East Devon. Okay, and if no one else has done so, I'd like to second the recommendation, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. In my house today, there were 6 people working from home, a lawyer, somebody in marketing, somebody in media, somebody in translation. Listen, since I fired you, Jeeves, you've been very bitter about it. And if you can call it work, I was working as well. But that's right. And so heaven only knows what our broadband was doing, but it was all working. There was one point where 3 people were in meetings. 3 of them normally work in London and were just down and were staying for a bit. So it is a part of the future. The young, I mean, I'm in touch with young people because of my children. It's interesting how none of them seem to be planning to go back to work for 5 days, and these are obviously in certain professions. 3 is the minimum their companies seem to want to allow them to be, and 3.5 maybe is kind of where it might settle, and that seems to be quite big companies are saying that's what we're going to do for the next 10 years, in essence, unless there's a change. Thank you very much. Rob, do you want to pick up some of that? Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, I'll pick up on the question around what are the constraints sitting behind some of our stalled allocations, and it's a very good question, and it's subject to a current piece of work that I'm leading on, which we're calling the stalled sites assessment. So we're working with our policy colleagues to look at the employment allocations in the current local plan that haven't come forward despite clear policy support and, I would say, unprecedented demand prior to the pandemic. What we're finding is that it's a lot to do with landowner intent, it's a lot to do with infrastructure costs, and the cost of construction, for example, at Hayne Lane is very, very high now compared to what it would have been before had we moved forward with our master plan earlier on. Some landowners seem to want to hold out for potential change of use to residential, to seek the higher values. But it's subject to the ongoing work which we're currently doing with viability, with our planning policy colleagues. One thing I would say is that the previous methodology that looked at the deliverability or achievability of employment sites for the current local plan didn't include an assessment of viability. It looked at things like landscape sensitivity, it did not look at viability. I think it was assumed that because housing is viable, then employment can use the same methodology in looking at whether these sites should come forward. We have had some success with our planning policy colleagues in that the HELAR assessment now includes an assessment of the employment sites. Are they viable, and not just achievable and deliverable, but are they feasible and viable? So that's a good bit of success we've had. And I think we've got a general agreement that all of the sites that you'll see in the emerging local plan allocated for employment will all have been subject to some degree of viability testing. So hopefully we'll not experience this in the next local plan period.
Thanks, Rob. Rob, that's very good to know. Thank you. Councillor Rickson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just coming back in response to Councillor Hookway's comments about people working from home. I, for one, am not surprised at all. COVID actually started the train of this, and people found they could work from home quite successfully using Zoom or Teams or other online methods. And they also realised that they could save an awful lot of money on travelling, because the cost of travel in this country is extortionate. By working from home, they could also save money on childcare, because they would be there for their children coming back from school. So I think it's let the genie out of the bottle, and I think it's going to be very hard to stuff it back in there again. Also, I think with regard to local conditions, it shows also in terms of the transport that there's very low cycle usage, which is would be much more desirable, but of course we don't have adequate cycle tracks which are safe for people to use. The potholes are legendary, and the A35 and A3052 were recently described as high harm routes. So why on earth would anybody try and cycle to work when you've got roads which are really not suitable for people to even get to work using a bicycle? So we really need, I think, better cycle routes and more affordable public transport. If you compare being in the sticks or in rural areas with London, look at the contrast with what they have there. They've still got regulated bus services, and they've got far better choice with regard to travel to work. And this is, I think, is why this is not going to, it's going to be very difficult for us to get people to get out of their cars, particularly if you're waiting for a bus and you've got a very inadequate bus shelter, which doesn't really give you protection in the weather with the wind and rain coming horizontally at you. You're not going to be that keen, are you, to go to work by bus?
Thank you, Councillor Rickson, very much for that. So we've got a proposal, Councillor Hall, second to Councillor Hookway, but we've still got Councillor Hayward to hear from before that.
Thank you, Chair. If I might address Rob directly, apologies if I've missed it within this report. And again, thank you very much. I agree with everything Councillor Hall said, that this is incredibly helpful data. And whilst I can't advocate printing off a copy for everyone, certainly a link should be sent to every member, stressing to them that they can download it to their tablet and do what they want with it. But it's incredibly good data. But what I can't see in here, and it was alluded to by Councillor Hookway, is, and I don't know whether the data can capture it, connectivity. So for people living in Cranbrook, I know my children live there, they get 900 megabits a second, and it's fantastic to go and stream films there. Elsewhere, being rather parochial in Axminster, I'm fortunate I get about 30, which is sufficient, but it does lag. Neighbours of mine, are extremely jealous because they get 10. You go out into the wilds of All Saints, and there's people there virtually on dial-up still. And I appreciate there is still stuff being rolled out, but I think, taking Councillor Hall's point, if we are going to compare year on year, actually connectivity now is no less important than your gas, your electric, your water. And that will actually factor in long term into how we as a district measure our productivity and encourage economic growth, because it's blatantly unfair. And I appreciate there's geographic constraints, certainly, and financial constraints to those people delivering them. But when you can work in one place and get 1,000 megabits, and then you work in another and you can barely, do anything, download emails, I think that would be very helpful data to have, if that's possible, Rob. And whether that can be teased out from another source. But I personally would find that very interesting to see how the district mapping of that pans out. So thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. I was just looking, I noted Councillor Goodman's point that the good news is more people are being born than are dying. But I did have a look at page 125 and 126, which is where they're not necessarily more satisfied. Life is necessarily more worthwhile. They're not happier, and anxiety levels are a bit iffy as well. So I'm not quite sure where that's coming. And it was a very interesting extra bit of data there. How on earth that can be proved, I don't know. Right, so we have a proposer and a seconder. Please can we go to a vote? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you, Rob. Absolutely terrific. And again, just to for those of you who bother to read what I write in the newspapers, I'd just like to thank the Rob's Economy team, the fantastic Gate to Plate at Axminster, which follows in the tradition of Honiton, and I know we've got aspirations to do them elsewhere as well. So well done on that. Thank you. And please convey our thanks to Tom as well for his work at the back of the appendix. It's fantastic. Thank you. Right, so now we go to the next agenda item, which I know is Naomi and Andrew, and it's agenda item 17, a report on the enterprise zone, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Plumber in over there.
Thank you. Thank you. To date, over 11 million has been invested in the Enterprise Zone programme. This is identified in the table after paragraph 2.1 in the report. We also saw the rebranding of the Enterprise Zone in September 2023, which was positively received by stakeholders. Currently, we have two sizable developments underway within the Enterprise Zone, with a supermarket and parade of shops under construction within Cranbrook Town Centre and a hotel at Exeter Science Park. This progress is really brought to life with the images in figures 1 to 4 within the report. At the outset of the designation, we made assumptions about the business rate income that was used to inform our borrowing potential. These assumptions were deliberately conservative to ensure borrowing would be met from our ring-fenced income. But as set out in paragraph 3.2, there are inherent risks when we're trying to predict business rate income due to differences in types of development, occupiers, governance, and economic conditions. In the graph in figure 5, and I note it hasn't come out in the report, just put a copy there for you, and I have provided copies for all of Cabinet, demonstrates that the initial estimates of the income in the Enterprise Zone have been substantially exceeded, and all potential borrowing can be covered by the business rate income. One feature of our Enterprise Zone is the presence of 2 district heating networks. As Cabinet is aware, we are currently working to decarbonise the networks, harnessing recoverable heat from the energy from waste plant at Hill Barton. Tonight, we're requesting additional revenue support for this commercialisation work for our district heating project of £250,000. This funding is required to conclude our commercialisation activity that's been underway since September 2021. Without this additional funding, the Council will not be able to progress this project. The additional request would represent a 4.5% budget for a 30 million project, and with a project of this size, a revenue budget of around 8.5% is usually expected. I'd also like to point out that a significant budget for this programme has been provided by external grant funding. In conclusion, the Enterprise Zone is a really powerful designation. We continue to see some really good progress being made across the sites, bringing forward new employment opportunities for the district. The analysis undertaken by the team demonstrates that the prudent approach taken and headroom exists for the confirmed strategic investments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Naomi, very much indeed for that. Can I ask any members from outside of Cabinet if they'd like to ask any questions or make any comments on that? No, thank you very much. Members of Cabinet then, please. Councillor Ledger.
If no one else will, I will. Can I propose that we note and approve just at the start, and because Naomi hates it, just thank her and the team for all the work that they're doing.
Thank you very much. These are like little haikus from you tonight, Councillor. Fantastic, minimalist, wonderful work. Councillor Davey, please.
Well, I'll second that, and I'll try to be equally brief. Yeah, it's a success story, and the graph looks incredibly encouraging that I've got in front of me. So I think, yeah, we just need to make sure that we get on with it and don't put anything in its way.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Did you second? You seconded, I think. Did that was the second? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on that? No, that's a slam dunk, Naomi. Well done. Thank you very much. Well, we need to take a vote, though, don't we, first? So all those in favour of that, please. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed for that. And now I'm going to hand over to that concludes the public part of this meeting. And so thank you very much for all those who've been watching and taking part. I'm now going to ask our Vice Chair to formally move us into private session, please.
Thank you, Chair. I propose as agenda item 18 that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public, including the press, be excluded from the meeting as exempt information of the description set out on the agenda is likely to be disclosed, and on balance the public interest is in discussing this item in private session, otherwise known as Part B. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we need to take a vote on that?
You do, and need a seconder for that? Councillor Ledger.
All those in favour? Thank you very much. And so that concludes our public part of the meeting. We'll just wait for confirmation that we're offline.
James, can I get a glass of water?
Yes. Members, would you not want it? Yes, 5 minutes. Can you?